me guidance, taught me valuable life lessons, and shaped me into the person I am today. So, who is Cecilia Dioxon? Cecilia is currently the Executive Director of the National Alliance of Philippine Women in Canada, works as a registered nurse, and has been doing community development and organizing work for more than 30 years. Cecilia, or Atisel as my comrades and I call her, hails from Negros in the Visayas Islands of the Philippines. When she was a student activist on her university campus, she led many of her peers to protest against the human rights abuses of the Marcos dictatorship, who during this time in the early 1970s imposed martial law all over the Philippines. Cecilia moved to Montreal in 1975, seeing that Canada, in her own words, is a place people didn't fear persecution, imprisonment, or death for speaking about human rights. By the 1980s, Cecilia was married and a mother of two, who saw a great connect with the challenges of accessing affordable childcare as a working mother, with the plight of Filipino women migrating to Canada under a federal labor program loosely referred to as the Foreign Domestic Movement, allowing foreign women to work as nannies in Canada under temporary and precarious terms. This labor trend would then be formalized in 1992 as the Live-In Caregiver Program. Cecilia and her family moved to Vancouver, British Columbia in 1986, and as a city seeing one of the largest growth of Filipinos in Canada at the time, with a major bulk of the community being comprised of Filipino nannies, it became apparent to Cecilia and the women she organized with that the majority of these working women faced many institutional barriers in the immigration, labor, and healthcare systems, along with abusive founded and formed the Philippine Women's Center of British Columbia, and thanks to their efforts throughout the years, at one point had chapters in Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, and Winnipeg. And in March 2002, the National Alliance of Philippine Women in Canada was formed. Not only did the NAPWC develop a support system that focused on legal issues regarding labor, healthcare, immigration, and housing, but they also prioritized raising the social consciousness of their members to engage with their communities and policymakers to demand their successful and genuine settlement and integration in Canadian society, and to resist economic, social, and political marginalization and inequality. In a huge and direct way, the organizations I belong to, which are the Filipino-Canadian Youth Alliance of Ontario and Siklab Ontario, which is a long acronym in Tagalog, are quite literally the brainchildren of the NAPWC, whom, through their decades-long of community development and organizing work, have instilled the proactive, class-conscious, and progressive Filipino identities for later generations to learn about and ultimately continue to build on, not just within the Filipino-Canadian community, but for the whole working class in Canada. Even though the Filipino community enjoys some representation in mainstream media and in the world of food, sports, dances, and traditional dresses, there is so much of this critical history that goes unnoticed, and in my own meager way, I want to disrupt that by sharing content like this. 5 minutes and 41 seconds is definitely not enough to talk about the work and contributions of Cecilia, and if you're interested to learn more about her and the organizations I've mentioned here, I've included some resource links in the description down below for your discovering and reading pleasure.
So don't forget to like and subscribe to Brian's YouTube channel. We'll put it in the
Naomi,
put it up on the screen.
Stop. I'm shy. Okay. So I think Naomi's going to talk more about the connection there as to how we use art and culture in our work, but also how that has informed and guided writing the book, This Is Home. And from all of that history to now, we are in that way very much connected, right? So,
I wanted to check in with folks. Maybe we can take like a 5-minute, maybe a stretch, a washroom break. Food, we've got food. We've got pizza. Is that pizza? Yeah, we've got pizza. So please, stretch your legs, use the bathroom.
Cool.
Chat to your neighbor.
5 minutes. Okay.
Say hello to us.
All right.
I selfishly I need to use the bathroom.
But sorry to cut it short, folks. We will have
We're going to have more fun.
more opportunity later to continue the conversations. Okay, so I hope you've been able to just stretch and grab yourself a couple of pieces of pizza, get yourself a drink from the bar.
Tip very well, please.
Tip very well. Okay, so in continuing, of course, the second half will be led by Naomi. But for later, especially for the question and answer discussion session, I would just like you to think about the different identities that we have as Filipino Canadians or Filipinos or Canadians with Filipino ancestry in Canada, and really look at like what it means for us to be those, which is of course like nuanced, but also in terms of what we were mentioning about community organizing and building on progressive culture, and like how much of our subjective identities can really contribute and come into play when we're talking about objective truths in our communities, right? So just a bit of like a wordplay here of what we think about identity politics and of course politics of identity, and really coming into terms with the relationship between subjective and objective. And it's okay to be biased, and I think it's really important to be aware of our biases and conscious, of course, with like the bigger picture, right? Where we fit in as Filipinos, but also what we might be able to contribute as part of the working class. I think that's where our bias as an organization comes from, right? Okay, so thank you very much. That's my part, and we're gonna let Naomi take it from here.
All right. Okay, I guess I'll jump right into it. So we wrote a book. Yay!
Yeah.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. We did it, smack dab in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. It was done almost entirely over Zoom. All of our writing workshops were online. And so it's truly a labor of love for a lot of the folks here. If you don't have a copy, please see Cherry or Victoria, and they would be happy to provide you one for a steal of 25. All right, so yeah, this is our most recent project, our most recent arts project. Its full title is This is Home, an anthology of Filipino Canadian writings. It's a collection of writings, musings, reflections from Filipino Canadian community members that tells of our community struggles, our history, and our aspirations, our dreams. And we released this book in March of 2022. I actually just want to read a little dedication that's in the book, if you'd be so kind to allow me. We dedicate this book to the transnational workers who have served as the backbone of our society during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, to our loved ones who landed here in Canada before us, full of dreams for a better life, and to the Filipino, Filipina, Philippine-X youth, shining a bright light on the possibilities of another world. So in May 2021, we released a call out to artists and anyone who is interested in writing. Regardless of expertise or experience, we wanted to enable participants to feel empowered to share their voice, especially during those times of uncertainty, anxiety, and grief. It was like really, really important for us as community members to also reach out and bring people into the fold, because it was a very isolating time for a lot of people. So community was super, super important then as it is now. So we had started writing workshops in June of last year, and we started these writing workshops as a way for us as activists, as writers, as artists to empower our community and collectively reimagine our society, and where our labor, value, and ability to participate meaningfully in Canada would be fully realized. All of the discussions and writings that we collectively created in those workshops culminated in this anthology project. The workshop and subsequent book are a way for us to assert our community's experiences, our struggles, our dreams, our emotions, our fears, our hopes, our aspirations, as we build a home in Canada. So why did we call it This Is Home? Because when we...
Oh.
We'll just leave it on the photos.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, why did we call it This Is Home? Because when we set out to do these workshops, we wanted to collectively try to attempt to answer the question of what home means for us. Like, what does it mean to be a part of this, like, very large, very vast diaspora, global diaspora, right? As we touched on last session, the Philippine government oftentimes had, deals with countries of, or governments of other countries, Canada specifically, that streamlined migration. Like, the Philippines' largest export was people, was labor. And where did this labor go? To quote unquote first world countries. So we were systematically relegated into jobs that nobody else wanted, that nobody wanted to do. And so a lot of our own personal histories are steeped in that history. For our community, again, historically and contemporarily, like, where's our home? Where can we go for comfort? Where can we go to struggle for a better life? That's why we wanted to call this country as, so-called Canada. We wanted to call this our home. We have a right, and like Brian was saying, we're entitled to have a good life and not be temporary or underemployed. We want a better life. And again, like Brian had mentioned, like, this topic of home didn't like arrive in a vacuum. It is steeped in a long, long history of conferences, of organizing both in the Philippines and here, right, trying to answer this question of what it means to have a home. Any questions? No? All right. So taking it back a little bit to 2010, so a little bit just after where Brian had left off, in the more arts realm, not that our arts and our politics aren't connected, they're very much one, but in the sort of artscape sphere, in 2010, the Makaisa Center launched a multimedia art exhibit entitled Maleta Stories right here in Toronto. This art exhibit was built on the Suitcase project initiated by the Kalayan Center in Vancouver in 2007. The collaborative art project was guided by 3 frameworks, namely community collaboration, critical engagement, and development of the art practice. And it consisted of painted maletas, which you can see on the screen there, or suitcases depicting the migration struggles of a Filipino family in Canada. The suitcases were symbolic of our history of migration to Canada and our need to unpack these stories. With the intent of continuing to unpack our migration stories, conceptualizing This Is Home came about because of the need to examine our stories and situation after migration more optimistically. We can be kind of Debbie Downers when we talk about our migration because it is a very heavy topic and something that a lot of families and individuals struggled with, our community has struggled with, but we wanted to do it in a way that still gave us hope, right? Hope is a really crucial part of organizing. The idea that we want to uplift our communities as well. Sorry. What?
You're killing it.
Well, oh.
So
Okay. I was like, what's wrong? Thank you. Yeah, and as well as to explore what it means to build a meaningful home in Canada through social change. So This Is Home represents the next phase of collective storytelling after our very historic Maleta project here in Toronto. Yeah, any questions? Does anybody have any questions? Please, questions. Yes, sure, please. Do you want the mic? Also, please don't shade me for my pronunciation of Maleta. The Maleta.
Hello, check, check. Sorry for the pizza in my mouth. I just wanted to say This Is Home is like really a continuation of the Maleta project, because here in 2010, we're still unpacking our stories, unpacking our migration to Canada, unpacking that journey and what we think are individual choices to leave the Philippines back home. But now in 2022, releasing something called This Is Home, where yes, we're still exploring what that means to call this place home, because for some of us, we still call it back home. Oh, did you go back home? Or how was it going back home? Or when's the last time you went back home? But here, to dare to say this is home is huge for our community. To say, nah, we can call this home too. And that's not to step on anybody's toes or say that we're against Black and Indigenous people who are also fighting for their place, and Quebecois people fighting for their self-determination, but to say we can also say that. We can also say this is home. We can also be part of the movement that is fighting for better lives, better conditions for everybody in Canada. And it's not to say that there's only like enough home or enough land or enough nation building for one community, but that there's room for everybody here. And what does that look like, right? To now think beyond just Filipino Canadian, but like just Canadian. What does that even mean, right? For some of us, we don't even like that word because it has so many connotations, right? The colonial state, KKK Canada, right? So what does it look like to reimagine something different? Yeah? That's it.
Thank you. That's it. Yeah, I mean, building off what Victoria had mentioned, I think this book is very representative of our grounding politics, which is COME, right? There you go. C, combating systemic racism. O, overcoming economic marginalization. M, making the youth count. And E, enhancing women's equality. If you take anything from today, you will know this abbreviation, acronym, you will know it. You will dream about it. You will know it. Yeah, okay. As well, this book, again, it came out of the COVID-19 pandemic. So a lot of our work is reacting to our conditions at the present moment in time, in that particular moment in time. But like Kuyamani said at the very top of the presentation, we don't only want to be reacting, we want to be building so that we can be resilient in the face of, ongoing colonialism, ongoing systemic racism, ongoing environmental travesty. We want to be able to have the fighting power in the community to change our society, to create social change. Because and also specific to COVID-19, Filipinos all over the world, not just in Canada, were working on the front lines during COVID-19. Many of the people here in this room were working in healthcare, and so healthcare, service, food sectors. So in Canada, we knew that our community's large presence in the healthcare industry only further highlighted existing issues present even before COVID. We were overworked, right? Underpaid, getting sick, right? We were right on the front lines. We were supporting this country that did very little, or continues to do very little to support us. And so it's time we take that back and get our dues, right? Yeah, also, even before the COVID-19 pandemic, again, there were vast amounts of issues within our community already, economically. I think this one, yeah, okay. Economically, if we look at the employment income of racialized groups compared to non-racialized groups, there's quite a significant difference between men and women. And then even further, if we break down the economic breakdown between racialized groups, and this is statistics from the 2016 census in Canada, you can see that Filipinos make up less and still make less than the average for all racialized groups. So our conditions still aren't where we want them to be. There's still so much room for us to aspire for better for our community. Yeah. Again, Filipino Koreans, this is our current context, current being 2016, but current enough. There are 837,000 of us in Canada as of 2016, the fourth largest visible minority, top source of immigrants, again, all credit due to our governments that are, basically pimping us out to the capitalists, accounting for 15.5% of total new immigrants from 2011 to 2016. Filipinos are frontline workers, overrepresented in healthcare, manufacturing, hotel and food services. Filipino men make 73 cents to the dollar earned by white men. And the Philippines is the sixth largest source of international students. Most study permits are issued for college education, which is, I think, something that is a huge industry nowadays, so maybe the statistic is actually underrepresentative. I think in my own circles, I find that a lot of international students have to pay double what domestic students have to pay. And so far, that's the easiest stream for people to get into Canada. It's kind of like a repurposing of, again, another immigration policy, another immigration policy that is secretly a bit of a labor policy and a big win for, private universities, great win money-wise for our country, economically speaking. Yeah. So it would be really interesting if anybody's into the research stuff to figure out what's going on with the international student stream, and what that means for a new generation of Filipinos coming to Canada. Any questions? No? Okay. Wanted to talk a little bit about the actual process of making the book, if anybody's interested. Maybe there are some aspiring writers in the room who maybe missed our call out last year, but we're happy to connect this time around. How do we create community-based art? And how do we do it in a way that isn't exploitative, right? Because let's be honest, there are a lot of stories out there that may herald to be progressive for Filipinos, representative of our community, when in reality it's at the hands of somebody who doesn't actually understand what we go through. So how do we make art in a democratic fashion, right? Not from the top down, but from the bottom up. How can we uplift our community and not just have somebody look at us from their, steely eyes and say something about us? We should be able to write our own history and not wait for somebody else to do so, which is what we did. Just bringing it back to the back. Yeah, community-based art is a medium for us to take our political calls, to share them to the general public. It's a way for us to spread the message, and for us, they don't exist separate from one another. Our politics, again, and our community arts are not separate. They are one and the same. And that's also why we undertake community-based art projects, and we do these workshops as a way of like priming ourselves to be able to give ourselves the progressive lens to actually look at our community and create the art that we want to see in the world, not something that is ascribed to our community. And yeah, it's not about creating art for the sake of creating art. Like again, I'm going to shout out Brian's YouTube channel, but Brian doesn't just paint and film it. He paints and then he gives you a history. And he gives you a lesson, if you will, on like progressive and historical like Filipino Canadians and Filipino art. Do you want to talk about that?
They're much more sharings than lessons, right? But I think there's lots of lessons to take in terms of, like I said, going back to kind of like looking into oftentimes the disparity between like like identity politics and just our experiences. Like we can't just kind of subscribe to I guess in terms of like mainstream understandings of Filipinos in Canada, because there's so much for us to talk about, and I think this is like one perspective. This is one very important identity that brings us together, right? Like as people of color, as queer trans, as first generation Filipino, second generation Filipino, is I think identifying with being part of the working class, and not just within the Filipino Canadian community, but in terms of like the broader working class in Canada. And to me, that's like the most refreshing thing, because first of all, it contextualizes a lot, right? Like it's not like a lone standing experience here and there, but you can see the scientific explanation as to why there are certain patterns that we experience as a community, as part of a working class community, racialized working class community. So I think like art and culture again has that potential, and I think art and culture again has that potential and power to really like lend like these like forms of art to really portray and voice out our experiences, basically, right? So so again, I'm also gonna bring it back to the folks here today. Like, how much of ourselves do we think is like, how do we often think of that part of our identities? Like, I think from what I've seen, a lot of us shy away from it, right? Because within capitalism, in this type of environment, in the mainstream, you're always kind of like, in the grind, and there's like aspirations that like bourgeois capitalists like notions of success should tell you ought to be as a young, educated, highly skilled young person in Canada. But then like the contradictions arise when it's like, okay, for profit's sake or art for art's sake, like it's not true. There's a lot of like, yes, there's a lot of like profit making, but we have to question like, what's the return to us as workers, as young people? And also, like, what's the benefit to the larger communities that we belong to, right? And like the so-called like revolutionary idea of under capitalism that everyone's one and the same is that if you just work hard enough, you can get there. That's also one of the, I think, biggest like cells of capitalism, right? But again, there are a lot of external factors that still divide us among racial lines. And immigration and labor is like concrete. They're concrete examples as to how these policies from a state level really like create inequality, and we're implicated in that, right? So like art and culture, art for art's sake, well, it's just not, art for art's sake. It's like kind of like progressive perspectives, and that's just the tool, right? So thank you for listening to my rambling once again. Okay.
I think I also like sort of bouncing off that again. Our art isn't disconnected from our politics. Like this is very much a product of our calls for GSI. You merely have to look at what people have written to see that there is a push. Like we as a community want better. Like we want GSI, genuine settlement and integration. And there's a portion of the book that talks about the future. Like what does it look like when we build a future that actually we're supported as people, as community members, right? Where we don't have to slave away. Like I think our writing prompt was, what does a Monday morning look like? What is it exactly? How do you feel? How do you want to feel on a Monday morning? And you can, like Kebs, where do you? I don't want to work. I don't want to have to work, I want to eat. I want to eat with my loved ones. I want to eat breakfast with my loved ones. I don't want to have to slave away. So there is that hopeful future making that we can all take part in. When we are able to achieve, again, genuine settlement and integration.
Cool.
Yeah. I think that's it for me.
Okay.
Actually, maybe, I don't know if somebody wants to read. I was thinking that we read a passage from the book to sort of end it off. Does anybody want to volunteer to read? Yeah? Do you have a copy of the book? No? Okay. Come on up. So this is a piece entitled What's in Your Maleta by John Mark Daga. Is there a mic?
The mic is coming.
Okay.
What's in Your Maleta by John Mark Daga. We pack hopes and dreams because the US-backed regime ignored our pleas for equality. So we set forth our journeys in search of truth and realization as a human being with rights and dignity. To the true north, strong and free. Somebody lied, because all we see is struggle, work, bills, struggle, work, bills, cry. And who benefits from the liberation that my labor creates? Not I. I, an outsider in this land that I'm supposed to call home, where my people are struggling to survive, to supply food and shelter. I thought this was supposed to be a better life. And I want conditions for my children to be better, so I fight. When I came, I forgot my shoes and socks, but brought a picture of my anak. What's in your maleta?
Thank you so much.
Okay, you good? Okay, folks, so thank you again. Is it Sarah? Marie. Oh, Marie, I'm so sorry. I have a mind of a goldfish. Thank you, Marie. And folks, we really wanted to open the floor to a Q&A discussion session. And of course, we're accompanied by Emmanuel and Cecilia Atesel and Koyamani back there. And if we have any questions, concerns, or just kind of like statements to make, you can direct it to Naomi and I. And of course, we have, again, Koyamani and Atesel, who have so much history to share with us too regarding everything that we've talked about in these presentations.
Ate Joyce.
I'm so sorry, yeah, and Yolin, Ate Yolin is also here with us, and Joyce Yoson, Ate Joy, they've also been like huge part of really establishing these community organizations, especially here in Ontario. So I think we can take this opportunity to really express like ask away and just like, let's have a discussion with some organizers that really like, brought us to this point, really.
Would not be here without.
Yeah, we
without
would
you
not
guys.
be here without them. Yeah, thanks. Okay. Thank you.
Should we? Maybe I'll start it off. Kuya Manny Ate Sel. If you would be so kind to share, like what GSI means for you, or can you elaborate on what genuine settlement and integration looks like for you? What it, or how we're supposed to come about it?
He's pushing me. I don't want to be pushed. It's part of my struggle.
It's always
It's
a
part
struggle.
of our struggle.
Yes.
And GSI means, if we are going to answer the question, if you can put the COME. Yeah. So that's kind of really talking about the genuine settlement and integration. And to me, listening to the discussion and also looking at your recent work, This is Home, how do we call ourselves, or how do we define home when it comes to really, looking at our society, Canadian state or Canadian society, with all these issues, right? Systemic racism, our community is being marginalized. And I know it's not only our community, but one of them is really our community who's been, socially constructed as, domestic work, nannies, registered nannies. Before it was registered nurse, now registered nannies. And also our youth, where do we go from here? So what kind of home are we really going to create, right? So I think this is something that can be continued in your work, in your organizing in the community, is to really look at these 4 issues. And it was really amazing. I was actually surprised when I was facing several bureaucrats, in the Department of Multiculturalism and Canadian Heritage, because there is a history behind this. We, as a struggling community, we want to show that we also have the capacity, we have the understanding of who really we are, who are we in Canada, what is our state of, of our home, of our work, of our youth, of our women. So we look at all these issues before we even sat down with the bureaucrat. And the response to me is that, my God, Cecilia, this is a very huge issue. But I said, what do you think? You think we look at this as a small issue? It is a huge issue. But I'd like to know if you have any records of Filipinos in Canada talking about systemic racism, talking about economic marginalization. Our youth, our future. You are our future. That's why we're really very happy to be here, because we see the youth We see the continuation of the work that we've started in the 70s. Okay? And then our women. It's a very big issue in our community. So home can only be called our home if we're going to continue to eliminate these issues as a smaller community. But in the bigger picture, which is Canada, we want this eliminated, all of this. Because this is not just the struggle of the Filipino community.
Yes.
This is the struggle of the majority of Canadians today. Today. So be proud and say, this is our home. If we can contribute towards the elimination of these issues, of the struggles that we are moving forward. So I think it's nice that you're going to continue to write about your struggles, okay? Because we will be going and it is good to see that it will no longer be inherited by our future generation. Because at the moment, this is always I'm always like thinking now we're back to the struggles that we used to, to look at in our community, and then we have not really gone far, when it comes to really looking at the years of work that we've done. We've only touched the surface of our community, okay? So even Trudeau, when they said that there is now the National Daycare Program, right? And a lot of provinces already signed in, that there's gonna be a partnership between the province and the federal government in order for them to have the National Daycare Program. That National Daycare Program was the answer to the scrapping of the LCP that we have put forward in our struggle to change the condition of the domestic workers and to change the condition of the women of Canada. Okay? Without the National Daycare Program, the condition of the women in Canada today will remain the same. We will continue to be, in the home. We cannot, the condition of the women, we cannot socialize, we cannot go out, we cannot be in the workplace, right? So when they ask us, why are you calling for the scrapping of the LCP? Because you're using this as a substitute for the National Child Care Program.
Yep.
And we want Canada to have a National Child Care Program because
Yes, we do.
so that our women can go out there and join the workforce, right? So, they're always criticizing us. Don't call for the scrapping of the LCP. I said, we will continue because we understand maybe a lot deeper than you guys. And because we said we don't want. Individually, we say it's the exploitation of our women. But it is not just the exploitation of Filipino women. In general, it is the exploitation of Canadian women because Canada is what? A developed country, a capitalist country, yet we don't have a national child care program like any other countries in the
Shame.
West.
Shame.
Shame. That's why we were talking about, and we were not ashamed. And we said, this is it. This is the call of the Philippine Women's Center is for you to have the National Child Care Program. Okay? And the universal child care, that is what we call, and the universal, the call for universal health care. And so I think we can only call the genuine settlement and integration of the Filipino community if we begin to really answer all these questions. And we have to begin to change our condition. Right now, I think it's a status quo. I don't know if you agree with me. but I think it's a status quo, especially with the COVID. And that's why I think the work must continue. And I think the Filipino community, according to the bureaucrats, we were the first one to actually come out with this program, a grassroots organizing and conference. They witnessed our conference. They were there. They want to make sure that we know how to spend our money. So, because they were really very, hesitant to give us the 3-year program. So every time we have the conference, they're always there. We would like to come. Of course, come, We're not afraid to say our condition of who we really are in this society. And so that's why this is a big contribution if we are going to continue. If the Filipino community, it is a collective contribution. It's to the Canadian society, and it's also our collective inheritance, so-called, to our future generation. Okay, so I think the struggle must continue, the work must continue, and yeah. So that's all I can say. Thanks so much for this.
Thank you, Ate Sel. Anyone have any comments, questions, or Kuya Manny, do you want to say something? Sorry.
Yeah, just
Okay.
very, very short one. Just sort of a reinforcement of what your Atisela said. And I would say, in looking back at the history of the progressive Filipino movement in Canada, which started out in the late 1970s up to the present, there are certain moments and there are certain, continuity and discontinuity, or there are ruptures and new openings for the continuing struggle of the Filipino community for, legitimate culture and struggle. And this struggle is being engaged to become part of the movement within the greater Filipino community. I would say that the golden age of the first progressive Filipino movement started actually in the late 1980s until 2007. But the priority during that period was for Filipino Canadians, progressive Filipino Canadians, to help the Filipino people in the Philippines make their history through their own revolutionary struggle there. And then the second stage has just started with, I call it, transition, because this is part of the history that's being written by some people in the community right now. Is beginning in 2007, there was a rupture, where, as what Brian has said, there was a reversal of the priority in the struggle, where now the Filipino Canadians are not only helping Filipinos in the Philippines make their history, but Filipino Canadians are now starting to make their own history here in Canada. In other words, from being simply solidarity or being in solidarity with Filipinos in Canada, we are now making our own history where we also expect Filipinos in the Philippines to be in solidarity with our struggle here. So reversing it, and this is where we are right now, between 2007 and 2012, I think, we call it the period of transition. That's why we have so many researchers during the time, we have so many conferences, and one of the latest conferences that Brian mentioned was the counter-spin. Why did we call it counter-spin? Because the history of the Filipino community has always been a spin to the right. Filipinos here to make good life, that we should be thankful to Canada because, they accepted us. And, and even the legitimate history in the history books, no, not legitimate, history book would tell us that, our struggle is we have to be thankful to Canada and all this and all that stuff. But for us, we have to counter that history. That we made Canada what it is today. We contributed to the strength of what Canada is. So it's not a spin to the right, but a counter spin to the left. That's why we call it counter spin 1, counter spin 2, counter spin 3. So that history is being written still, and it will become part of our legitimate history. Now, maybe one last point I'll mention about building a home in Canada. How many of you know about the balete tree in the Philippines? Or we call it in English the banyan tree, where it started out with big roots and trunk, right? And then as it grows, the branches starts dropping to the ground. And those branches start dropping to the ground, and then they become trees themselves, right? They get into the ground, take roots, and then so you have one original tree trunk, you have another tree trunk here, growing and growing. And that's how we look at Filipinos in Canada. We started out in the Philippines, we grew, we moved to other countries, we take roots in Canada, in the US, or of the world, and then we strengthen ourselves. So we're like the banyan tree, which in the Philippines is an enchanted tree. And in India we call it the Buddha tree, where Buddha in fact sat down and discovered self-enlightenment. So for us Filipinos, our struggle in Canada is a continuing process of self-enlightenment and at the same time of freedom. So we take legitimate roots in Canada. We still don't forget our original roots. But like the banyan tree, we grow in Canada and we become legitimate in our struggle here. That's all I want to say for you.
Any questions?
Should I stand up for this? Should I stand up? Can I sit down? Up to me. Okay. Sorry. My name is Marie Soto. I am Filipino Chinese, second generation diasporic. I grew up in Scarborough. What was I going to say? My pronouns are they, them. And I'm an artist. I work in community. I've been doing community work all over Toronto for a very long time, and a disruptor. I work mostly in downtown Toronto, on the side doing some tenants' rights organizing, anti-gentrification work, and a lot of Pan-Asian arts organizing. Thank you so much. That was really inspiring to hear and very rare to be able to have this opportunity to just be in the same room with you. So thank you so much. I really like that we're talking about some hardcore stuff and a really, really fluorescent pink lights, just overhauling the world and anti-capitalism. I love that. I think just thinking about home, and defining what, talking about Filipino Canadian identity and what home means. I think when we say this is home, I think home is community. And I think, you were talking about hope, and hope, they say that hopelessness is a tool of colonial. Not, we don't think of that as a tool to dismantle any of the systems that already exist. It's been ingrained in us that the systems that exist are fixed and absolute, but that's not I think that's what's great about what we can do is imagine beyond. And as someone that works within the arts, I think that's something creative thinking of finding the nodes and connects and the root systems and how they're tied together to exchange that. And within what we're doing now, I think everybody's just our existence is resistance, and existing authentically in what we're doing, in whatever role anybody is in undermining any of the things the suppressive system, I think that matters. And just like if you work a frontline, or if you work like in retail or whatever, and just having a conversation with someone, that can change a life and that can change a world, like something like that. And I think there's so many opportunities in seeing like how we build our relationships within community, and like community fridges, in like mutual aid, in like fundraisers. Like I think all of that matters, and it's the culmination of all these tiny moments, interactions, that create like a wave. And I think I'm just so inspired by everything that you said. So yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about anymore, but thank you for listening.
Thank you, Marie. Concerns?
I have a comment, just going off of what Kuya Manny at Sal were speaking of, and what Victoria and the presenters were talking about with building a home. But then I also have a question to put afterwards. Something that we have been talking about during the whole process of This Is Home is like, what does it mean, and like, how do we build it? And I think something like I've been organizing and with the Makaisa Center since 2009 something that I think we're much more bold to say as a community, and I think that we can really propel this forward more, is that it's true, like we can call this country home, and we can struggle alongside other people of color, with indigenous people. We can struggle with the Black community. We can struggle with the Southeast Asian community. All of these identities and struggles, we have commonalities with. And for us, like, that's what we want to say. Like, even in the past 2 years with, a lot of the Black Lives movement that really, like, I guess, brought people to like the realities like of working class Black people in the States. It trickled into Canada too, and we were all asking, like, what does this mean for us? And in the beginning, I think as a community, we felt that it was something external. And I think at least as we were continuing to speak about this in our circles and with other participants and members in the Makaisa Center and in the community, that we have to struggle. We have more in common with, people of color than those who are oppressing us, right? So for us, I think it's really inspiring to hear, Victoria and then other members really like asserting that for our community, because it's true, like that's how we assert our history too, and take our place in this country. So I wanted to say that, because it's something that I feel like it's new. I feel like we're coming into that identity. Like, if we're talking about identity, politics of identity versus identity politics, I feel like we're really, we're coming into an identity that's bolder, more political, more intersectional. So I think, like, as a community, like, we should be proud of that. I actually have a question. It's very particular to something that Naomi brought up, and it was on the stats. I know that there was some other stats that were brought up recently about our community being having high employment rates amongst, marginalized or racialized communities. And as organizers and as progressive people, I just want to put it out there to have kind of like a discussion to kind of tease out what it means that our community has one of the highest employment rates as a racialized community. Actually, it was Christina that brought up the stats. I don't know if I'm quoting the stats right. Am I? Yeah, okay. But yeah, I just wanted to see if I could put that out as a discussion, so that we could, if we ever come about it, we understand what that might mean, even though we might want to do more research, but yeah.
Do you need a mic, Christina?
You're fine, I think. Is it this one? No, not that one. Oh. Here you go.
Hello, my name is Christina. Yeah, we didn't put that up on the slides, but that's something that we've been thinking about actually. We know that Filipinos, just looking at that bar chart there, we can see that Filipinos are overrepresented in pretty much all of these frontline industries. So healthcare work, Filipinos are the dark blue there. Manufacturing, as well as accommodation and food services, so hotel work, your Timmy's, McDonald's workers. And these are, just looking at accommodation food services, this is the lowest paid industry in the country. The average wages are around $17 per hour. And what does it mean for us to have the lowest unemployment rate out of all visible minorities? And this is something that the labor force survey that's carried out by StatsCan has captured time and time again. And StatsCan actually, they conduct this survey on a monthly basis. It's a sample survey, and they only started collecting data on visible minorities during the pandemic. So this is something like race-based data is something that's becoming more and more popular. And it's something that we've only started to look at ourselves, like trying to unpack what this actually means. So from the perspective of a progressive, like Filipino organization, what does it mean when we contextualize these statistics? We're the frontline workers, we're also the most employed, gainfully employed. What comes to mind when you folks hear that, right? Like, no, it's rhetorical, but not. What do you think?
I think it's an indication of like the colonial mentality and it's manifested through those statistics. Like something that I hear. Oh, it's okay. What? Sure. It's for the stream. Oh, it's for the stream. Okay. Well, my name's Monica. My pronouns are she and her. As I was saying a second ago. I think that the stats are indicative of how prominent the colonial mentality is within the Filipino community. Specifically, like, something that I've noticed throughout my life is, Filipinos work so hard. And that's because that's the only time like our parents or maybe even you, like when you've come here, it's to work. And I mean, I speak from experience, but even my parents were brainwashed by this Canadian, American capitalist dream of success, of being rich, of having everything that their parents didn't have, you know? So I was thinking about that, and I remember, is it the next slide where there's the average income? Yeah, Filipinos, they're like, in terms of income, and with women especially, the Japanese and, okay, but I think all of it, yeah, anyway, sorry, other thing. But for Filipino women to be making more on average than other racialized groups, like, that's indicative of like the servitude of women and also the patriarchy within Filipino culture, even though it used to be matriarchal. So that's also a product of colonialism. Anyway, I'm just gonna go on a tangent, so someone take this. No, I think I'm good. Did anybody have any questions about that? I'm like rambling, I didn't know.
Hi everyone, my name is Bea, my pronouns are she, her. I have a lot of things to say. First off, you can get your fourth doses now. Please get your fourth doses. Ask me a question if you have any questions. Second point, for the international students, if you know any international students that are in private universities, tell them to go to a public university or public college because they won't get their harder time to get PGWP that way. It's a whole other thing. I know they make it so hard for international students. The third thing about this, I have a bit of a knowledge about this because I worked with Professor Kelly. It's more like there's a connection between like Filipinos being encouraged to go to the trades route, the college route. There's like an underrepresentation of Filipinos graduating from universities that are not nursing or healthcare professions, and that's something that people in the academia are like trying to change, because I remember Professor Kelly saying he was invited to join a roundtable of people encouraging Filipinos to go to like the trades route, the college. He's like, no, why would I want to be a part of that? He's like, we should encourage Filipinos to join all fields, whatever they want to join, and not just push them into one thing, which is almost always nursing, almost always healthcare, right? So that's one thing that's why this happens in a way. It's like we're so overrepresented in things that way, because it's like, well, yeah, I know someone who works there. Well, my mom said anything, all those things. And it starts from like the ground of being just like, you can't, like, you can just do whatever you want. You're already here. Like, not just be like, oh yeah, well, my mom said I have to be a nurse. All those things. And what else? I had so many things to say. But yeah, those stats are sadly real. This is what I deal with at work. I look at this all day. And I don't know what's the steps we need to do, but we need to look more at it and like, what can we do and how the outreach works, and just getting to kids and being like, you can go to university, you can go to whatever you want to do. You don't have to go to nursing. Like, I guess that's what I'm saying.
No, I just realized I didn't actually get to my point. Well, the reason why we're paid, the reason why Filipinos are paid more is because the employer knows, like, they play on that stereotype that Filipinos work so hard. So, like, maybe that's their way of, like, separating us, because there's, like, and some Filipinos are racist towards and xenophobic to other Asian communities or racialized communities. Okay, that was all. I didn't actually say why.
I don't want to add too much, but like with my friend, and he's done research within like the Filipino community and just in Canada, and how like Filipinos are seen as like the model minority, you know, and that's why like we are like, I guess like, I don't want to say like white people, they do like us more because like they see us work so hard, and they're like, oh, but they're not like other POCs because they work so hard, and so like that's why you know, they view us as like we work, like they want to hire us because they see us being that model minority. And like to add to like kind of the point of like why a lot of them are like in like trade jobs or like fast food jobs is that like when they come to Canada, like I came and I was like not 8 years old, but like, you know, as like we're coming here and then you're seeing like an opportunity to work where you weren't able to in the Philippines, like once you're working, you don't really see school as an option because you're making so much money. So a lot of these like students that like start getting their first jobs at Tim Hortons or McDonald's, they were like, oh, now I'm making so much money, I don't need to go to school. But really, they can do something that's like much better and like they can earn more money. But they stay in these jobs because they just don't think it's an option to go back. Yeah.
We have a question. Yeah, to the back.
When Filipinos are, especially women, are earning higher than any other marginalized communities or ethnic minorities, is because a lot of Filipinos, they work 2 jobs, okay? So if they're only earning like 25,000 a year, but they have 2 jobs, now they become middle class, earning over $50,000. So they belong to the higher income level, you know, than other communities. I really, very rarely, I see Filipinos with only 1 job, okay? Even myself as a nurse, I worked in 3 hospitals before. Like, we have, a lot of us have really no choice, okay, but to work hard. Really, it's, and if you also, we also had our studies that a lot of Filipino women who came from the Philippines, they're professionals, but they're actually there when they arrive in Canada, they go down to the level of, low earner. So in order for them to catch up and in order for them to send money home, they have to do 2 to 3 jobs. So I think I'm not really surprised that we as a community is earning more than, a lot of academics say that, because Filipinos, it is an issue of language. But if they study specifically and focus on the issue of language, then of course, because a lot of them are already professionals and they speak English, okay? Except in Quebec that you really have to speak French, right? So, but here in Toronto, I think that's the case, and there's also a lot of jobs here, so for low skilled, they considered low skilled, workers. And it's also very functional to the capitalist system that if we have we are recruited because of the labor needs of Canada, even below the minimum wage, and a lot of Filipinos, they accept because when they're here, there's really no choice but to do this job. And we did a study of the Filipino community, the Filipino workers, and it's between the Philippine Women's Center and Simon Fraser University. And yes, we found that, we're really, we're into different industries in BC. Even the Philippine Women's Center, we look at the issue of the hotel workers, mostly Filipinos. Now I'm working up north in the Cree community and also in the Inuit community. They're starting to realize that if they hire Filipinos, Filipino nurses, they will stay. Okay? A lot of our nurses, so our non-Cree, they just stay like 1 year, 2 years, and they leave, right? So now, I'm really surprised. In a matter of 1 year, there were 10 Filipinos arrived in that community. And I was asking, why? What's happening, right? But they're not blind. They see that we work hard. We're reliable. We are, we're knowledgeable. And yes, they can rely on us for maybe up to 5 years. So there's more stability in terms of their needs, right? If the nurses stay for 5 years, that's very good. we're hire more. And I'm seeing that. I'm seeing that right now. And I've been working there for like 10 years now. And I said, wow. I said, maybe they haven't realized that if they are going to hire more Filipino nurses, there's more stability because they stay. And Filipino nurses, they don't have any choice if they have families, right? Is to earn more than nurses working in the South, like in Montreal or anywhere else. So that is answering to the economic issues also of our community, right? They can buy a house, they want to stabilize, they want to educate their children. So all these personal needs are also, is being factored into the, why, they're earning more and they're, so from low skilled to professionals, they're there, right? And so, and a lot of Filipino nurses also right now they're seeing that if they go north, they don't have to speak French, okay? Because the Cree community and the Inuit community, they don't require French, okay? Because their language of work is English. So again, that's one point among the Filipino nurses, because if they don't have French, then they cannot work down south. Right? So again, that's at the same time is a challenge for our workers. But on the other hand, they can be there to continue earn better, salary than workers in the south. So yeah, so I think it's very, very good to see that. But at the same time, we need to understand that this is not just an economic issue. This is also a very political issue. We're in a capitalist society. So, and we are very functional. That's why they recruited a lot of domestic workers from the Philippines, and not just Canada recruiting it, but also the Philippines pushing the women to go out and work and earn some dollars for the Philippine economy. So both countries are benefiting from our labor. And so I think what is important is also understanding our labor, as part of our culture, as part of, in terms of also the art that you're working on in the issue of culture. So it's important to understand the issue of work, and issue of women's work, because that's our culture. That is also how you can theorize in our community. I think this is home is also a really good base for theorizing in our community. We've always been being underestimated that we don't know how to theorize because we come from the community. We're a grassroots community. And for the academics, it's a no-no. We are not supposed to know, and we are not supposed to know how to theorize. But we are already, doing our theories we have. So enrich this, and enrich these experiences as part of your art and artwork and culture. So we this is always a struggle within the academy, because they told us before that they cannot accept the participatory action PR research community. I said you can only come to our community if we are going to use this methodology. We have no other methodology but participatory action research. If you accept this, then we can collaborate. If you don't accept, we cannot collaborate with you. And that's being assertive between the the communities, you know. Okay. So there's no other community that they can work on. They accepted us. Okay? But I said, this is what we want. This is what we want. And that is the kind of, what kind of home do we really want? You know, a home that is assertive, a home that's, you know, still continue to struggle against injustices, a home that is continuing to relate with other communities, marginalized communities, and this is home. So I think the home that you are making, you know, and future home is a kind of a model home. Okay, so I think that is very inspiring, you know, very inspiring. A model home.
Some last points about the stats. I was able to track down the unemployment rate. So as of April 2021, we were at 5.5%, and compared to non-visible minority Canadians, that was at 7.7%. So we're about 2 percentage points lower than non-racialized folks, which is interesting. We're very good at working, yes. The other interesting stat that I found was that our senior Filipino folks are working a lot longer than others. 3 and 4 at the cell, we know very well. 3 and 4 of our senior folks in their 60s and 70s are working, around 75%, compared to non-visible minority Canadians, where they're only about 2 and 4, so half of them are working in their 60s and 70s. So, you know, what is this saying? We're very good at working. You know, we're working into our senior years. What does this mean for our future, right? And I think we really need to smash this like model minority stereotype. It makes me very angry. I currently work in the government. I've worked in academia, and honestly, fuck these fucking people. Honestly. Because, you know, they like to tell us that, oh, actually, you're doing okay. Your community's not so bad. You know, y'all are working. I'm like, bro, we are working these 2 jobs. Like my aunt, she's a dental assistant full time, and she works on the weekends at a grocery store. And as, you know, like she supports 3 kids, and she's been rent evicted from her home. And I think to myself, for my little cousins, like what is this future that we're fighting for? Is this the model that we want other folks to embody? Like, why is the bar set so low, right, when we think about future building? And I really think about this quote by a writer that I really love, Adrienne Marie Brown. She says, all science fiction is community organizing, and I think it's so important to talk about building alternatives and really envisioning this world that we would like to see. And I really encourage folks to read our chapter about the future in our book, always bringing it back to the book. And if I could, I would force Kebs to read his poem. But I think it's so important, and why, you know, we continue to use arts and culture and really to build out what it feels like to embody a different world, and to tap into these feelings of pleasure and rest, things that we don't get enough as community. So, you know, the seeds of the alternative world, I think, are already in our everyday experiences of these little moments, right, when we let the light in and we experience joy and community. So anyway, I'm gonna leave. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ateo, and I've been organizing more than maybe 20 years ago. So you could see my age already. But I just want to share my experience as a young migrant who came to Canada. Same thing, same story. Start with a restaurant, then to move to factory. Oh, got full time. So this is my story, and then now I'm a healthcare worker. But I mean, you guys, when I was at your age, I also attended this kind of event. And that's how I learned. And when we say the balik ugat, balik komunidad, it's always stick in my mind. This is me. And I learned a lot from our community. I'm a member of SIC Club, which is the workers section. And a lot of researcher, academic will come to us and said, oh, we want to get research about LCP, about the workers and blah, blah, blah. But as I said, Atisel said, the participation action research is only like just to write down our story, and then they didn't come back to us. So what we want is like both sides, like we learn from them, and the person who shared their story will also learn what's gonna happen with our stories. So that's how we learn. So for me, I just want to share this to you guys, so you could educate yourself. And I know what you're saying about your parents is this, or your aunt is this, that forcing you to get this healthcare worker or whatever. But in reality, you also have to understand that we don't have a choice, because what they want is for you to have a good job and to get a better future. You don't need to argue too much about it. If you don't like it, just, okay, I want to get a different. But what I'm saying is, because a lot of people I know, their kids, because I'm working with a healthcare worker, and a lot of Filipinos are sharing their stories about their kids now. And I was like, oh my God, this is the story of our community. So they're saying, oh, my kid doesn't want to take this, he want to go this and that, but there's no job. After they finish 3 years, they don't have job. What am I going to do with them? Still stay in the basement, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, I was telling them, oh, you have to understand, this is their struggle. Like, I learned that from the youth that I work with. You also have to understand. So it's a vice versa. So I kind of understand the parents' side and also the student side. But for me, we also need to educate. The important thing is to educate and mobilize. So if you educate, we learn something about the statistic. We have to know our rights. So that's the part of that we're doing at SIC Lab. And also the women's issue. We give them a workshop about Know Your Rights workshop. So the labor, the employment, we work so hard. You know why the reason I realize why they want Filipino to work? Why they keep you a pat in the back? I worked 15 years in the factory. They love me. You have Filipino, cousin, family. Come, give it to me. And I was like, what the? Because we are part of the capitalist country, right? So they want to work, want to hire someone who's like a machine. One person times two ang position. So why can I hire this person? If I hire like, so they divide and rule, divide the community with other community. So, because you're better than this. I was like, what the heck? That's not right. So now I learned, because I was like, before I said, oh yeah, thank you. But now I have to say, no, don't say that. You have to say something, because they're dividing us. So what we have to learn is that this is our home, this is our community. We have to learn how to struggle. We have to fight for our rights. So we have to continue. Don't stop, because if you stop, who's gonna continue the work that we're doing? Who's gonna understand what we experience here? Like the Aboriginal, they stop talking about their history. Nobody will talk about them, right? So we have to continue same thing. We have to learn and mobilize, and So this is a good, and then we have to practice. We learn something here, and then when you go out, you do something different, and you forget about what we learned. Yeah, so you have to practice. You have to, you just go home, talk something to your cousin or whatever. Oh, I learned something today about this statistic, which is from the start, you could talk something, a little about community. Because when I'm telling you, when I moved to Canada, I don't even know about LCP. I don't even know that this is going on, right? Because I grew up in the Philippines, we saw, anyway, colonized. So, but now I learn a lot. So you have to share your knowledge to others. Thank you.
That's very good, Jolene. I just like to have some play on words, because I'm just intrigued by your slideshow, which says the politics of identity and the identity of politics. I would like to to theorize on this particular statement.
Sorry to interrupt. I got that from you. So
let's take this one, Brian. The culture of legitimacy versus the legitimacy of culture. The culture has been implanted in us that Filipinos are hardworking. It is legitimate to work 2 jobs, right? For a Filipino, that has been legitimized in our community, right? So that has become part of the culture. So you call it the culture of legitimacy. Now, the legitimacy of culture, is it a legitimate culture? That we have to work 2 hours a day? That we have to, work more than 8 hours a day? That we have to, do all these things in the interest of capital? So again, because that's a theory, the culture of legitimacy, in other words, the capitalist culture is legitimized, or is it a legitimized culture? Or we build our own culture. That's why I use this play on words, because I like your theme also, building a progressive community and culture. Try to think about that, guys.
You may as well say something. I mean, you're already holding it.
I feel pressured to say something. No, I just like with all of the statistics and everything, but we always have to be critical, right? Like, what type of work is our community doing for the most part? And I think we shouldn't take a blind eye to the type of work. We always have to be very critical of that. Like when we talk about our genuine settlement and integration, we always have to be critical. Like what is our, what do you call that? Like, what is our presence here? Like, what does it mean also? But we also have to assert for that, right? Because it's not going to be handed on a silver platter. We already know that. So we also have to be critical when we look at our community, because it's not, like, our community is also, like, it's very easy to just say, well, as long as we have a job, right? But you know what I mean? As long as we make money, but we always have to be a little bit more critical of what type of labor is being given to us, right?
Is there any other comments or any questions to put forward? Can we do a time check? It's 8 o'clock. It's 8 o'clock. So any last questions, comments, or else we move to mingling?
Just one thing. I think, you're doing the camera there right now, Victoria, or Christina, but maybe we can talk about the upcoming fourth workshop. Would you like to give mention to the next upcoming workshop?
Miss V, just...
Yeah, you want to come up?
Come to the front.
Thank you.
Hello, check. So thanks everybody for coming today. Maybe I can close it out too. So thanks for coming. I know it's a busy weekend. Summer in the city is always hectic. So thanks for making it out. Next, BUBK, or BUBK as my 8-year-old nephew called it today, is going to be Sunday, August 4th. Same time, same place. That one will be finally moving into the future. So we started the first 2 sessions with history, starting with the history 7, sorry, oh my God, sorry, I'm so sorry. Sorry, not sorry. Let me show you my face. Sunday, August 7th at 5 p.m. right here, we'll be moving into the future. So the first 2 sessions we did critical Philippine history, where we looked at our history from a critical perspective in the Philippines, and then we moved into our history of migration from the Philippines or wherever else we came from in the world to Canada. And then today we did our present and talking about our more recent history as an organization. And I encourage you to ask for more of that political tea today and any other time. But today's very special because we have our folks from Montreal and the center joining us. So please ask those questions. So on the 7th of August, we'll be moving into the future.
So now that we've taken you from history to present, how do we want to re-envision our future so that it can be a better place, not just for Filipinos, but for everybody in this place called Canada? And of course, this summer we're using music as our art medium. And I think, at this cell was talking about participatory action research. PAR. And that's not only a model that we take in our research projects, but also in our art making, which you've seen in This Is Home, because throughout the whole process, we always asked our participants, this is your project too. So whatever you want to do, we're going to do it. Let's talk about it together. Let's collectivize everything. Let's be super democratic, because that's how we want to behave in our future too, right? So in this iteration with music, we're going to be doing lots of different things. We're going to be starting with songwriting / spoken word poetry, because I think the message of your art is everything, right? And so now that we've learned everything, how do we start to apply it and start to practice it and start to practice making our own messaging that is political, that is expressing and reflecting the issues that are going on in our community and reimagining the future? I think Christina had a quote from our goddess AMB, Adrienne Marie Brown. How did it go? We can't imagine our future until we begin to decolonize our minds. How do we decolonize our minds so that we can reimagine the future? And she said something else. Christina's a very wise one, very young, but very wise one. She said, we need to love our community so much. We need to love our spaces and places and geographies so much if we want to make them better. But if we don't love them, how do we do that? And I think I'm personally coming into this space at an individual level because like Toronto taught me to hate on my city, but I'm now like letting a lot of that go, or trying to, and say, no, I love my city. My city is dope. There's so much art and culture and woke ass Filipinos in this city, and spaces like Justin and Sari and Ivy and the whole team, the whole squad that are really trying to put on these spaces for our community, right? And while we don't have that physical space yet, or we're rebuilding it, how do we continue to do that in our communities? Because I think somebody said home is community, right? It doesn't have to be a physical, geographical, whatever. Next Sunday, we'll be joined by a couple special guests. Finaxis, who was a rapper, still a rapper, artist based in Quebec, who I just saw yesterday. He's out from Montreal. So he'll be joining us on Zoom to kind of talk about how the Magkaisa Center influenced him to write really conscious rap, along with Daga Muffin, Kim Mortal, who I think some of you know out in BC. And then after Naomi and I take you through like a fun music, lyrical study of our favorite songs and artists who have really powerful messaging through their lyrics, we're gonna move to a songwriting workshop with none other than Christina Alcordo. So she's going to be joining us on the 7th. So super hyped to be doing that first piece, and then eventually we'll be taking you into like DJing and why you select certain music and genres and artists, and how it's actually a really collective situation because you have to suss out the crowd. It's not an individual DJ show. And then we'll do like a poetry, spoken word piece eventually. So if anybody wants to get involved in that, please approach me or any of the coordinators in this space. We're always looking for people to read their poems from This Is Home, some new stuff that they're working on, or just get involved if you want to like help out with a workshop. Please let us know. I think at the Yo's message of like, you need to continue organizing and educating and mobilizing. Please join us. We're always trying to build our capacity. Hit us up. There's always lots of tasks and lots of roles for everybody. I think that's it. Any questions? Who's gonna sing first on the mic? Who's gonna do karaoke first? Not me. That's true.
Cool, thank you, Christina, and thank you.
Victoria!
Victoria. I was listening. I'm listening. But thank you for talking about the next upcoming workshops. It's hella sick. Do people still say hella or sick? Like dope. That's sounding dope. But folks, we are going to now move into more of like socializing, and of course with like just some precautions. We are going to be doing some karaoke in a bit, but then that's also going to be a chance to have conversation with the people here, get some more food, whatever's left of it, and please hit up that bar for some more drinks. Thank you very much.
You really did. Drink. I'm obsessed with her.
Yeah, and I think she had a Spotify. Like she got a new one, and I remember I just subscribed to her old one, like the old song that I like.
Anybody who wants to buy a book, please approach the front.
Yeah, please come. I got the date wrong, but it's August 7th.
Low cost of $25.
Thank you, Kuya Mami. Thank you. I think so, yeah. This is Sarah. Sarah Kuya Mami. What's your art project? I just wanted to like,
Group picture, group picture. Where do we go? That side? Follow my voice.